All right, everyone. Good evening. My name's Thane Rosenbaum. I'm the creative director. Hey, it's a comedy club, but no heckling. Certainly when an amateur like me takes the stage. I'm Thane Rosenbaum. I'm the creative director of the Forum on Life, Culture, and Society. We're called FOLCS.org. We make ideas always interesting and entertaining and fun. And here's one you look, and Judy doesn't agree that we do that.
No, I said,
She goes, I've done the show.
every single one
I've done, well, only the ones that you're on.
are fun. Okay.
So we've had Judy before. Tonight's conversation is cancel culture's war against comedy. I'll introduce our guests, but I want to just start off by reminding everyone that it's around 8 years ago that that America seemed to lose its sense of humor. That people could no longer take a joke. That there was a sense of grievance and bitterness. It was very ultimately un-American, and people went on a moral crusade again on the idea of people being offended. And comedy tends to offend people, and so the question is, we know what happened with the cancellation culture. Political correctness took over the culture, and people got canceled. And so we're really here to discuss what happened to comedy during that period of time. Where do we think cancellation culture is, and did comedy come to the rescue? We have a great group of people assembled. First of all, the person who owns this building and the Comedy Cellar, who is a true First Amendment free speech trailblazer, Noam Dworman. Thank you very much. Who has 2 different podcasts. I've been on those shows. One of my books on free speech, he had me as a guest, and he's a really good moderator, which is why he's on that side, moderating from that corner. Judy Gold and I are such old friends. She's going to freak out when I tell the story. It's almost 30 years ago that we did something at the 92nd Street Y together that was considered a classic. We did something on Jews and Jewish humor, something on Jewish humor.
Really shocking.
Yeah, it was funny.
Especially
I brought Judy Gold in for that. I don't know why, but that thing
yeah,
did
the
so
Y, too.
at the Y.
Crazy.
That thing did so well that they kept re-showing it. It was just endless. I'd see people on the street and they go, "I saw you with Judy Gold." I said, "It's 10 years ago," and so.
Well, now it's 30.
It's 30. Judy really had a glittering career, and
No, I haven't.
the cancellation culture is something that's been on her mind. How do you know that? Best-selling book on the cancel culture. She was in a documentary about the cancel culture. She was in a one-woman off-Broadway show about the cancel culture. She really has achieved so many things. She's been in movies and talk shows.
It doesn't matter.
No, but it is. There's a
The View. She was on The View.
She was on The View.
Oh, God, no.
2 enemies.
Okay.
Can I just say
really
one thing?
just a stand-up
Can
comedian.
I just say that there's one thing that's not in your bio that upset me, that I like, that should be in there. Vagina monologues.
Oh, God, really?
Yeah, you were great. I saw it. My kids and I saw you that night.
Who wasn't in the vagina monologue? You were in the vagina monologues.
I wanted to be in the vagina
Yeah.
monologue. And our new friend, you're not going to believe this anecdote, Karen Bergreen, who has been on The View and the Jim Gaffigan Show and Comedy Central, and she's appeared at all the Comedy Stores shops in New York City. She's got a podcast. She's also an author. She's also a lawyer. Went to Harvard undergrad. That could
All right.
That should,
Really?
fancy. That should be interesting.
We could say Harvard now.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you can.
But you know, her husband, we did not know this, was a guest on one of our shows. 11 years ago, we just realized this. Her husband, Dan Alonso. We did a night with the Jordan Belfort on The Wolf of Wall Street. The movie had just come out, and we had Jordan Belfort, and we had her husband, who was one of the prosecutors of Jordan Belfort, and we had a woman, Kelly Evans, who has her own show on CNBC. So and that's like 6 degrees, very incredible 6 degrees of separation. There you go. That's why Judy's here, to help me do this.
No, and everyone's really interested in that story about Karen's husband.
Yeah.
No, but it was an insane night. It was insane.
Yeah, I don't want to
because-
get into this details.
Okay, we're
but
not going to go into the
all right,
details.
so let me just start off with something that is an anecdote, a little moment of observation. We are in Greenwich Village, of course, and 60 years ago there were way more comedy clubs. And at that time, it was known not just for comedy clubs, but it was known for one guy who got arrested all the time, Lenny Bruce. In fact, he's only been recalled recently from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but without that show, I fear that people would forget that he would show up at comedy clubs. The police would be somewhere on the corner waiting for him to say something obscene, and they would haul him away. And he was known as a First Amendment crusader for that. But the thing that I want to point out, that was when the law censored speech. And what the cancellation culture did is that the culture censored speech. That it was an example of moral banishment, almost like the Scarlet Letter. The people decided they wouldn't tolerate this. The people objected to Roseanne Barr's tweet. We're going to talk about that with Valerie Jarrett. That's a whole nother idea that the police didn't show up. We became the police, this moral crusade. So I want to start with Noam and say, how was business during the worst of it? Did New York City lose comedy clubs because of it?
Business was booming.
It still is.
It still is, yeah. Well, one of the first of all, people who go to a comedy club, it kind of self-selects for people who are offended. People who know that they're easily offended by jokes. Going to a comedy club is not their first choice of an evening out. So there's some self-selection in New York City. But having said that, one of the things about cancel culture, which I always suspected, is that a small group of people were creating the illusion that there was this big critical mass of people who actually felt this way, when it was more like the Wizard of Oz, this man behind the curtain who created this illusion of being a big and all-powerful and scary entity. So even when we were in the news every day very negatively, because when Louis C.K. came back, this was like a national, worldwide story. And we had death threats, and I had emails about my kids, and we had servers here, a waitress who was wearing a Comedy Cellar t-shirt was spit on the subway. And we had protesters outside, and yet business did not take a hit at all, which was an illustration to me that it was all an illusion.
But companies and board of directors took the bait.
Yes, they panicked.
Right. The New York Times took the bait. Disney took the bait.
Yep.
A lot of major corporations took the bait. A friend of mine, who I won't mention, but he's on my board, was a president of a television company out in California, and he couldn't believe what was happening. The board of directors would assemble these people and lecture them about what they're doing wrong.
Yep.
And there was this one anecdote with the producer of the show, 2.5 Men. What's his name? And The Big Bang Theory, you would know. The production company, I won't name the company, that owned those shows, sent a consultant to lecture him about comedy and about the writer's room and how he needed to change the writer's room. And he was told by the president of the network that you have to listen and you have to adapt. And 10 minutes, apparently, this is a true anecdote. I forgot the guy's name, but everyone remembers it. He said, 10 minutes in, he said to the guy, "Get the fuck out of my office." He said, "Get the fuck out. You don't have the slightest idea how these shows are put together.
Right.
Just get out." And he was powerful enough to be able to do this. But everyone else took the bait and said,
Yes.
"Look, we're sending someone over, and you've got to modify your material."
It was a moral panic. I mean, there were a couple of profiles in courage. Netflix did not buckle when Chappelle got in all that hot water. Nothing happened to them.
That was the trans stuff and some of the Jewish stuff.
Yeah, I don't think anybody
No one
cared
gives
about
a
the Jewish
shit about the
stuff.
Jews.
The trans
Hello.
stuff. The Netflix employees were not protesting about
Yeah.
the Jewish stuff. And Spotify did not buckle at all when Joe Rogan unearthed, these jokes about black people and saying the N-word and all that kind of stuff. And even when some prominent music artists fainted that they were going to leave Spotify. Spotify just held the line, and everybody forgot about it like 48 hours later. It was all illusion.
Karen, Judy, did you edit?
Oh, we're one person
Yeah,
now.
No, you guys, because you guys write this stuff. Did the two of you censor, modify, exempt any material in that whole era that you said, you know what, I would do this bit or this joke, but I don't think I should do it now? Anything?
Yeah, yes. I have a couple that I did. I mean,
Give us one. Give us
I'll give
one.
you one. I'll give you one that I had a joke when I was single that I did a lot. That was sometimes I get so bored at a party I'll slip myself a roofie, and I got a mail from domestic violence people. I thought it was insane, and I am. It's like you have to. It's Judy and I have talked about this. You have to know who the person is who's making the joke. There's nothing in me that's
The joke
supportive
is
of
not about rape.
It's not about rape. It's about me being bored.
Right.
And it's that thing, that trigger happy thing that if you say a word, they can't hear anything else. I could have said anything with the word roofie in it, and I would have gotten that letter. And I just thought it's not worth it to me. And you know what? I'm not brave like the people that you spoke about. I just didn't do it. I just didn't, because I didn't want the discomfort.
Judy, anything like that, or anything
Okay.
that you bucked the trend and did it anyway?
I have a couple things I have to say.
Good.
Number one, Lenny Bruce was arrested for cursing, but they really wanted him for the substance of his material. They didn't, he was talking about the Vietnam War and segregation and the president and just all this stuff, and he was telling the truth, and which is why Joan started doing stand-up, by the way. Joan Rivers came down to the Village to see him and said, oh, he's saying the truth and making it funny, and so he was her hero. But I agree with Noam on many things, and I also agree there really is no cancel culture. The best thing that could happen for your career is someone to say you're canceled. No one gets the only person I know who was really, truly affected, I mean, besides Roseanne Barr, but she's not a stand-up, is, well, she was, but she didn't do it, it wasn't because of stand-up, was Kathy Griffin. I think she suffered really unnecessarily. But the question at hand is, and I think what Karen was trying to say is, what is your intent? What is the comedian's intent? You may hear it one way and take it a certain way, but that's not how they intended. So you can own that you have this sensitivity, but when the comedian has no intention, that wasn't even what the point of the joke is, then go fuck yourself. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Sorry. It's a comedy club. Whatever. Okay. So I don't really censor myself, but I do.
When the intent is also there?
Yeah, of course. And then you get up, you can leave.
Right.
You can leave.
Yeah.
Here, if you don't like the show, Dylan will be like, take care, here's your money, and
In other words,
hope
if
you'll
a
come
person
back.
concluded that you actually believe something and it's not to,
That's on them.
Then
They,
right.
It's not about you.
Okay.
Well, these audiences don't realize, no comedian gets up in the morning and is thinking about your childhood trauma when they're writing their material. Okay? And so there's this connection that's not really there. But I will say, I don't censor myself, but I do have a line, and as George Carlin famously said, it's a comedian's job to find out where the line is, deliberately cross it, and then make the audience happy that you did. And it's true. I think there's many factors. First of all, I will censor myself when I feel like the audience is laughing for the wrong reason. If I do LGBTQ stuff and I sense that they're homophobic, or if I'm doing Jewish stuff and I'll call them out and I sense that they're anti-Semitic and laughing for the wrong reason. But I was thinking something else and then I went off on
Judy,
a fucking
we
tangent.
we had an email one time about you here.
Oh yes.
I want to. This is something we're going to do. We're going to take a break every 10 minutes, and we're going to go to Noam, because when he won a Lifetime Achievement Award at an anti-censorship organization.
Oh wait, did I nominate him for that
yes,
award?
that's how. I was there, and
so well deserved.
he.
Thank you.
And
Judy.
you were. I know. I saw you there too, Judy. He read out
I was
a
the
number
host.
of mail that you received, right? So let's just take a break. Just do
Well-
one.
I just want to read this one about Judy because she talks about people laughing for the wrong reason. We had an email. This comes from someone who is not easily offended and has a good sense of humor. I don't care if Judy Gold is a lesbian; she's still homophobic. So this was
Okay, and let me tell you something.
someone who did not understand Judy's jokes.
Right. So here I am.
And I had to give a refund, by the way.
You did?
Of course.
Fuck them. I came out on stage in 1996. I faced such backlash, gig loss, whatever.
We stopped booking you. Okay. Joke.
Such a fucking
a joke.
asshole. And these motherfuckers, are so precious and pearl clutching that you wouldn't be. I walk in these clubs now. I come in here. I see trans people and gay people and non-binary people just matter-of-factly.
I made this
talking
happen.
I don't think I made this happen. I think I'm one of the people who didn't have that audience. Sort of broke down these barriers a little bit. But there were so many of us. There's a Netflix documentary about it. And, I don't know.
You can mock
so-
your own people with love. And I don't mean just like only, you can only mock Jewish people or lesbians. It's like if your circle includes other people and you have firsthand knowledge of them. I mean, for me, the nails on the blackboard moment is when somebody who's really ignorant makes a negative stereotype. Again, this isn't like they should be banned or anything, but it's simply not funny and annoys me when somebody makes a stereotypical nasty joke about a group that they're not really that aware of. And so,
Well, you can't. You can use a stereotype. It's just history.
Right.
It
Right.
comes from history, real
Right.
history.
No, I mean,
But you
like,
can
if
use
you-
it
if
for a
you don't know those-
specific person.
Yeah, but yes,
Right.
totally.
That you
don't
have
know
a
those
personal,
people. Yeah.
connection to. You can't say like generally, Jews are cheap,
Right.
Or gay
But-
people, or
But
lesbians,
But Jack Benny was.
Have you heard Kanye West's recent song, Judy?
Yes, I love
I think
it.
you can
It's
say
so
Jews are cheap.
catchy.
So was there, before we called it the cancel culture?
Wait, I wanted to say one other thing. Howard Stern is also another example of being canceled and fined and fined and fined. There was the Hays Code,
Yeah.
which was this code that they used, even for films and on television, which determined, what could be shown and how movies would end. But when you really think of cancel culture, you think of Lenny, you think of the Smothers Brothers, who were fired.
Yeah,
Like,
but that was
fired.
for their politics.
Right.
Right,
They're on
entirely.
TV. They're
Right.
doing jokes about Nixon.
Yeah, that was completely.
And Pete Seeger's up there. He was banned. They put him
Yeah.
on anyway.
Yeah, people forget.
But yeah, people forget that.
So, was there a canary in a coal mine moment, a harbinger? I was thinking of a couple things. Like, for instance, I remember when Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock said they were no longer going to play colleges. Like, that was sort of a big deal, that they decided colleges was a problem. Then I came up with another anecdote that you're going to love. No, I remember this one. Before Giuliani became the mayor,
Oh, he's terrific.
yeah. Before he became Mr. Mayor, he lost that first election. And this is a great New York anecdote. Many of you may remember this. But he lost that first time he ran for mayor against Dinkins. And Giuliani had one celebrity on his side, and that celebrity was the ace in the hole, and it was Jackie Mason, who had the biggest show on Broadway at the time, the one-man show, The World According to Me, and Jackie Mason was in that camp. And Jackie Mason, one day when he was asked, why are you supporting Giuliani? Do you remember what he said? He said, well, Dinkins is just a fancy Schwarze in a nice shirt, right? And the place went nuts. Everyone, I think I may say it again, he used the word Schwarze, the derogatory Yiddish word for a black person. What I remember about that is it didn't help the campaign, and it certainly sunk. Giuliani did not win that first round, and it might have had something to do with that. But there was a moment that people also forget, was that Woody Allen came to his defense. In an accidental moment, that Woody Allen doesn't do interviews, but someone said, hey, Woody, what do you think about what Jackie Mason said? And I don't know if you remember, this is a great Jackie Mason story. Woody Allen walked up to the microphone and he said, I just want to say that Jackie Mason is a Borscht Belt comic who's of a different generation. And in the Borscht Belt where he cut his teeth, the word Schwarze was used all the time, and it was not done in
It's
the...
not a I
it's
mean, my
not the
mother
N-word.
never thought it was a
It's
derogatory.
not, it's not the N-word. And Woody Allen, before he himself became canceled, literally said, stop saying that. It's not the N-word. It's something else.
But that
yeah.
brings up such a good point, because things change, the world changes. Things that were funny 20 years ago are no longer funny because we've had different experiences, war,
Right.
destruction. So when people go back 20 years, like Kevin Hart, for example. Kevin Hart, I've known Kevin since he was he's
A little guy.
Yeah, but
Kid.
he's such a great guy. He had a very unfunny, there was a bit about, beating his kid up if he found out the kid was gay. Okay.
If he was an effeminate gay.
Yeah, he was an effeminate gay. And it wasn't even fun. I didn't find it funny. I don't know, Noam, if you thought it was funny, because you're a white entitled male. But, no. And he apologized.
And he lost
And
the
it was-
Oscars.
and it wasn't enough.
And he lost the Oscars because someone brought this shit
Oh my
back.
God, he lost the... He was supposed to host the Oscars.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was how many years ago? And it's just like, all right, so I'm the only gay on the panel. And although I know you...
I have
Speak
something
for
to tell
yourself.
you, Judy.
So, as a gay, it just reminds me of our movement. Like, we fought so that we could change people's minds and show people we're just like you. We just want to live. We want to have families. You know us. Even though you don't think you know a gay person, you know and love a gay person. I'm talking about the 80s and 90s. Like, that is how we approached it. And so you know someone who is gay, and that personally changes your mind. Oh, my uncle's gay. My teacher was gay, and you have this sort of connection, and it changes your mind. You want people to evolve. So in comedy, it's the same thing. You evolve, and so does the world, and you can't go back. If I have a relative who hated me because I was a lesbian, and I'm going to hate them for the rest of my life after they say, you know what, I didn't realize, I'm so sorry. It's time to move on, but we love digging shit up about people.
And it's like, it's actually counterproductive. Like, it makes people dig their feet in and never apologize.
Right.
Which is such an issue.
Right.
So let's talk about people whose careers was damaged. And you mentioned Roseanne Barr. Yes, you're right. Her show was taken away from her, right? I mean, it's like you
There
remind.
would be no Connors without
Yes,
Roseanne.
exactly.
Yeah.
There wasn't the whole point. So they took her show away for a tweet. Now, I was reminded of this only because I thought about what Woody Allen said about Jackie Mason, because the answer was, oh, this Roseanne Barr was a raunchy comedian, had lots of material that had that kind of, can you say trailer trash? I don't know if what you say, but that was her whole material. So she wrote a tweet about Valerie Jarrett that was a trailer trash. Jarrett, sorry. And so they'll cancel me. Well, remember there was that, in one of my books on free speech, I talked about this, I forgot who said it. It was after an Oscars, someone said, and they had to make this incredible apology, they said he referred to the movie as Hidden Fences. And there was two films that were African-American films, but they were something called Hidden Something and Something Hidden Figures and Something Fences. And someone conflated it, and they had to make a public apology. And to this day, I don't understand that.
Okay. Well, I think, can I do the Roseanne thing?
Yeah, do the Roseanne thing.
I mean, she did do the tweet, but she had done a bunch of other shit, too. So it wasn't like, it's like she was not mentally, she was freaking out anyway. And, we're here at Noam's Club. I hate the term safe space. I think it's, but this should be a safe space for comedians. And it is. This is probably the only club that is safe. They don't allow phones in here. They are.
And you're saying that because nobody's taking a recording.
No one's taking a recording and then posting it out of context. Noam's philosophy is, you're the audience, you don't like it, bye, here's your money back. But they are on the side of the art form and of comedians, and this is their space. And it is the only art form, when you really think about it, where the audience is a significant part of the creative process. No painter like Van Gogh didn't paint half of a mural and was like, oh, should I put more sunflowers? Like, no one in front of an audience. We don't know. We get so much information from you, but we don't get it from you if you're coming in here like, I'm offended by this, I'm offended by that, I got to get a clip, yeah. Right.
Well, I just want to say about Roseanne, what is it in law school? Is it hard cases make bad law?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a hard case. The idea of comparing a black person to an ape, this was a third rail in Howard Cosell's time. It's not. It's a coarsening of the culture that.
Does everyone know the Howard Cosell reference? I want to make sure everybody knows that.
Howard Cosell said, "Look at that monkey run," and got
Yeah.
fired. Although it came out later that he had actually used that. It got excited and said the same thing about white running backs. And Howard Cosell, as opposed to Roseanne Barr, he was a civil rights fighter.
Went to Yale Law School.
Yeah. No, but I mean, he was.
Yeah, no, he was on the left.
Yeah. So.
Noam's also an attorney.
But nevertheless,
Sure.
in a different, if cancel culture and all that includes, were not such a hot issue at that time, we would imagine that if Roseanne Barr tweets out comparing a black woman to an ape, and she got fired for that, we would not be alarmed by that. We
Right.
would say, what the hell is the matter with you? This is, a
Yeah.
major television network. They can't have a star doing stuff like that. We don't want that. So, I'm of two minds about the Roseanne thing. She also had obviously some kind of mental break, but that
problems,
doesn't, as they say about Kanye as well, right? But as I said, hard cases make bad law. I don't know where I stand on that one.
But
But
it's
they
not-
reached down way further than comparing black people to apes to find people to fire. They were firing people like at Slate simply for saying that they didn't think that the guy from the New York Times who had said the N-word when he was just quoting it shouldn't be fired. Like Mike Pesca got fired simply for thinking that, maybe he was right and maybe he shouldn't have been fired for that. That's how crazy it got.
Well, or hidden fences, things.
What? Excuse me?
What I just said before. About
hidden fences.
I mean,
Or
that's
like
you got to be kidding.
Wasn't like one of the
Ridiculous.
executives at Netflix fired for saying the N-word in a conversation where he was upset about racism? This kind of craziness.
A white professor at Berkeley was fired because he read the lyrics of a rap song written by African Americans that had the N-word in it. It's in the song, but he was a white professor, and he had the audacity to read the lyrics in a literature course, and he was put on indefinite leave.
Or somebody got fired for using a Chinese word that sounded like the N-word. Or somebody got fired for using that. I didn't want to be out there saying it. The N-word that means stingy. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that went on.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Now, the Roseanne Barr case, was she fired simply because of the tweet, or did she make the whole organization very uncomfortable by her behavior? We might think it was because of the tweet, but was there a pattern of behavior that made everybody feel like this woman is not?
But you
It
guys
was because of the tweet.
But you
Okay.
guys know something that I don't know. It's not my world. She was huge.
Yeah. It was the
Right?
number
If
one
you could
show.
bring,
Wow.
if you can
She
bring her,
started-
she was so used. That was the thing that shocked me. From my perspective, I'm like, oh my god,
She
that this could
created-
happen to her.
That genre of, hi, I'm a comedian, and they're going to make a show about my life. I remember in the 80s, every comic, other than me, had a development deal. It was like comedians were tailoring their 7-minute, 8-minute TV sets to, I live next door to my grandparents, and they're horrible, and I have a dog, and he's got 3 legs, and, blah, 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 blah. And the entire set would be a set
Right.
about, here's my TV show. And it was because of her. She really started that whole genre.
What about?
But she shouldn't be a poster child for what we're talking about. What she said was right.
Right.
Well-
But then there's there's the other side of it. You have Bill Cosby,
Yeah.
who's canceled because of his actions.
Right.
I agree with that.
But Louis C.K.
No, I don't. I love Louis. I just want to
that's
say,
what-
Why do you draw the line, Judy, between Louis, where it's actions, and Bill Cosby, as it's just the actions are worse?
Or I want to add.
Is that what it is?
Because Cosby was a multiple rapist,
So the actions
yeah.
But
are
there's
worse.
another version of the.
But one
no,
of them is
because here's the thing about Louis.
I just want to know.
This is all I
interested.
have
I'm
to
not
say
being-
about Louis
too
is
much.
that, Louis has obviously some illness or he
Right.
behaved badly, like a lot of comics
Right.
who you don't know about because you're not in the comedy world. But Louis's actions, he created 2 shows for 2 women, Pam Adlon and Tig Notaro. The head of his production company, women. The head of his casting, women. He was the only white guy comic who was creating stuff and work for women. Yes, he had this stupid addiction. I'm, of course, old, so I'm of the generation of they're like, what would you do if Louis took his dick out in front? I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Put that away. You're disgusting. But that's because I grew up in a
Right.
different time period.
Right. I mean, everybody has I started a little bit after
And
you.
he did apologize in
But
the New York
that
Times.
was the
Yeah.
that reminded me of the story that Barry Weiss wrote about with was it an Indian comic who she went on a date.
on India. With Aziz.
They went on a Aziz. They went on a date.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And
That was
Barry
insane.
White, and said, "You got to be kidding! That's just called a bad date."
100%.
Right, that's a bad take.
That's a bad
And
take.
also, Bill Cosby is a serial rapist, predator, and
Who
he
drugged
denied
people.
it.
Right.
Louis C.K. admitted it and wrote
No,
an
this
op-ed.
made me so. He didn't
Yeah.
write. He wasn't in the Times. His letter of apology, but it was
All right, you
widely.
know what, Noam?
It
Who
was.
cares about
You gotta get it
facts?
right. It was widely distributed.
Yeah.
But it's.
Oh, no,
I'm
there
giving
was another
a visceral
op-ed.
reaction to talking about Louis in the same conversation as Bill Cosby.
Yeah, I agree.
Louis was.
Yeah.
The accusation is he was out late with these girls till the bars closed. He said, "Hey, you want to go back to my hotel room and smoke some weed?" And at 4 a.m, he says, "Can I masturbate in front of you?" Sorry. And apparently they didn't answer. They were laughing or whatever it is, and he did. I mean, it is
and
what it is.
someone, he was on a call and someone heard
He
him
didn't touch
breathing
anybody. He didn't. Yeah.
also-
he didn't threaten-
Well, but
and wait, they took him. They memory hold him. They even overdubbed his voice in The Secret Life of Pets because he was stupid enough to admit that he did this, to compare him to Bill Cosby. But even Bill Cosby, I would say, if some comedy club wants to present Bill Cosby, that's their business. I mean,
Right.
as Americans, we're supposed to say, well, he did his time, whatever it is. I won't go see him. But what they will do now is they will activate to try to ruin the club,
right.
Yes.
which wants to present
Right.
a free American citizen from working.
And that's a social media concept.
Yeah.
Like that's only done because
But
of
it's
social media.
don't you think
'Cause it
it's a
goes-
bad business
It goes to the
decision?
point that you said before that
Yeah.
you think it's a minority, but they're a very loud minority, and they find ways to speak through social media.
Yeah, but this to me is similar to us losing our understanding of why we have the exclusionary rule where we throw out evidence or any number of protections in the criminal law. We have to understand as a culture that the idea of almost like vigilante enforcement of what we don't like is a path to disaster. If a free Bill Cosby wants to be presented at the Village Underground, it's none of your friggin' business. That's
Right.
America. He's
Right.
free. The procedures that we set up that we believe in have passed on him, and they've decided either he's done his time or he's not guilty or whatever it is, and now he enters back into society and he can do what he wants.
Right.
And that's what liberals used to believe. They used to fight for
But I
that.
have a question for you.
No. No, go ahead. Okay.
Because I
Talking to
feel
Mike.
like I hold 2 thoughts in my head at the same time.
What?
That's my issue here, right?
Like Judy.
Because I agree with you, and then there's also why should Bill Cosby get people's business when there's all these up and coming comics whose nobody's ever
It's
heard
none of your
of?
fucking
Hold
business
on,
why Bill
hold
Cosby.
on, hold on.
Yeah,
My
sorry.
question for you. My question for you
Yeah.
is, if Bill Cosby's team said to you,
Yeah.
we'd like to have a special night
Yeah.
at the Comedy Cellar. We can ensure that the place will sell out and you can charge per ticket. You would have no issue with it.
No, I wouldn't do it because I don't want to be involved with Bill Cosby.
Right.
Right.
But that's
right.
my decision.
Right.
But-
Okay.
but-
I just want
but-
to see
but-
where the line was drawn.
I can draw my line on any number
Yeah.
of places. That's not other people's business where
All
I
right.
draw my line.
Wait,
Leslie
can I
Bill
say-
Cosby.
Can I
Okay.
add on to what Noam was saying about
Yeah.
how they go after the clubs? So 2024, was doing a bunch of shows against anti-Semitism that were pro-Zionist, that were pro-Israel has a right to exist. And we were not only protested against, where they're calling us baby killers as we walk into the club, which is fine, because they're just idiots. They don't know what the fuck's going on. But the employees, like, what would you do, Noam? The employees for upcoming dates were like, we're not going to work if you're going to have those Jewish comics here. And they canceled our gigs. And a lot of the employees were going online and saying, call the club and tell them not to, to cancel these shows.
Well, remember, this is what happened to the Barry Weiss and the entire editorial op-ed team at the New York Times. This is what happened to a number of conservative senators that had their book deals crashed. It was the young employees. It was what got Woody Allen's book deal was crashed. All of the same thing. They had one thing in common.
Right.
The employees said, "We're leaving if you publish this
No,
book."
these people not only they weren't they were like, we're not showing up,
Right.
and we're gonna do harm against the club. Like, now, do you have a right to fire those people, Noam?
If they don't show up to work, yeah. Absolutely.
So I want to get to a delicate point that I hope we
But
can.
can I comment?
Yeah.
I mean, we never came to that. We had certain flashes where it might have led to that. And I was able to overcome them by explaining to the employee where I was coming from in terms of wanting to present.
Did it work?
Yeah, it did work.
So let's get to one area that I've written about and is deeply controversial, which is the satirical magazines Charlie Hebdo and the Danish magazine that did the Mocking Muhammad cartoons. Now, there's a number of issues related to that. First of all the cartoonists at Charlie Hebdo, except for 2, were killed in a terrorist strike. Every single one of them, except for 2. The guy who owned the satirical magazine and remember, this is for just doing cartoons of Muhammad, with a turban and a bomb or whatever it is that they were doing, making up some statement. So there's a couple things. First of all, Yale University Press published a book about the cartoons scandal, but they refused to put the cartoons in the book. They said, literally, we're afraid that the Beinecke and Sterling libraries will get blown up. We'll publish the book, but we're going to leave that out. I don't know if you remember, this was a low point. I resigned from Penn International because of this. This was a low point when they honored the surviving members of Charlie Hebdo with their Freedom to Write Award, and 8 very well-known novelists boycotted the night. Now, this goes to, what does this go to? This term of art that maybe you can help explain to me, punching down. You hear this term of art all the time. You're not allowed to punch down. You can't make fun of people who are brown. If they're brown or a person of color, you can't make fun of them. And if this is a sensitivity of their religion, you have to respect that. Now, one last thing I want to say about this. The Book of Mormon doesn't get that same treatment. And let me just say, there's a great anecdote, which I put in one of my books on free speech, where when the Book of Mormon came out, on opening night, before it was even a giant smash, the Church of the Latter-day Saints took out an ad in Playbill. In Playbill, it was the back page and said, "You've now seen the musical, now come into the church and see what we're about." That's it. That was it. That's all they needed to do. They didn't threaten to kill people. There were no machine guns. They didn't bomb anything. They just said, you know what? And that show's been running forever. And they just go, all right, well, that's our religion. Okay.
Yeah.
So punching down.
Well, Judy, I mean, I'm going to let Judy take it much more, but I'll just say there is such a thing as punching down. We all do react to it. That's what a bully is, right? A little guy, however you want.
But isn't punching down funnier?
No.
It,
No, it's
it,
not funny.
it
Okay.
can be.
Easy.
I mean, you know, as with a lot of these things, some of the jokes, a rape joke, a Holocaust joke, is a higher degree of difficulty. But Judy and I know, we all know that the geniuses, they manage it. You know, they with a twinkle in their eye and somehow and their charisma.
Can you guys give me a Holocaust joke that you like?
Judy's got a ton of
I
them.
have 100 of them.
Give us one. Give us one, and she's already told us she's a Zionist. Give us one that you think you've always loved and people seem to like.
Well, here it was in a movie about humor in the Holocaust. I had a joke about how, you know, I'm American, and I realized, you know, I'm truly American when one night I was at a gig, and you know, in a hotel room, and this when A&E was like the Holocaust channel, and it was like all they did was show video of and film. There wasn't video, but film of the concentration camps and them being liberated. So one night it's 3 a.m. I can't sleep. I'm on the road, and I'm watching this video of one of the concentration camps being liberated. And I thought to myself, now, if I was standing on line naked for the gas chambers, would I hold my stomach in? And the joke is about
Yeah, it's about you.
it's about me. It's about how we talk about women's bodies in this country. And you know,
I think Larry David stole from you because he went on Saturday Night Live and did something like that.
Oh, God.
No, he got up there. Do you remember this?
No.
He stole from you. It was more recent. He said. He told the story about what would happen when everyone was naked. Do you think a guy would walk up to a girl and hit on her?
Oh, yeah,
Because
yeah.
they're both.
Oh,
remember,
yeah.
we're both naked. This is a very good situation for us.
Right.
I didn't notice you before what you were wearing in the cattle car. Now I see you're really hot.
Right.
Let me go and work. Work
well,
my.
it's the guy's point of view. Like a woman is like, oh my God,
yeah, exactly.
I want to look. You know, Elisa, I was just talking about. I thought of another Holocaust joke recently. It's too dark to even say here.
Say it.
But I was trying to write a joke about and Karen was there when I tried this joke out about how, you know how everyone this stupid shit where you get up and you put your face in a fucking ice bowl of water, that trend that's going around. So I was trying to marry that with the Holocaust, and I'm like, you know, the oldest Holocaust survivor just died, you know, survived the death march, the pogroms, Auschwitz, and the loss of his entire family. And when they asked, you know, what do you owe your resilience to, he said, I get up every morning and I put my face in a bucket of ice water. And so no one really laughed, right? But I, of course, think it's fucking hilarious. And then Elisa said something to me, and this is just us having a conversation about, wouldn't it be funny if, you know, how did you survive? You realized that your whole family died, you're the only one left. And she said something like, I survived because I realized, I don't have to deal with my family. And really terrible? It's just, I mean, but that is something I wouldn't stay on stage. I'm telling you this because we're in this.
Yeah.
And
We're
I'm
in a
sure
safe-
it'll go out on
Yeah.
fucking do not tell anyone. But like but that's just a thought. I didn't bring it on stage, but that's how far we go to figure out where the line
What
is.
you're saying,
and to-
going over it, like.
but
Carl-
that is about like,
Right.
you know, it's not about, whatever.
All right. Well.
I think also it's kind of what we were saying before. It's the intent. Like, is your intent to shock? If your intent is to say, like, you know, a lot of the young new comics, like white young guys, will say the N-word just because they think it's edgy, and that's like their joke, right? Or somebody will punch down. They're like, "See what I did? I punched down." But if there's something actually funny and you're finessing it because you are a truly good writer, that is a totally different thing.
You know what? There's this idea, I think punching down, you know who punches down? First of all, in so many other countries, you cannot do stand-up. Stand-up comedians are killed, like the Charlie Hebdo and all this stuff.
Well, do you guys know
Satire,
about Dieudonné in France?
Yes.
Dieudonné.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And so all these people, you know, satire weakens propaganda. Comedians are usually truth tellers, and it weakens their bullshit propaganda. So let's just take Trump for an example. No comedian at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and yet, he's deciding what is funny and what he wanted to investigate SNL. But he thinks Pocahontas is funny in the middle of a State of the Union address, or they punch down.
Making fun of a disabled reporter.
Right, and also the guy that they had as a comedian. No,
I didn't think that was punching down Trump's Pocahontas. He was making fun of Elizabeth Warren's bullshit story that she's American Indian.
But
it may not be appropriate for that, but it wasn't punching down. She deserves to be ridiculed if she made that up.
I kind of.
I kind of think your president.
I would say it's undignified.
Right.
It's an undignified thing to bring to the State of the
Right,
Union.
it's not
punching
presidential,
down.
but it
Okay, but what about the island of garbage floating in the middle?
Well, that was a comedian.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's a comedian. That's punching down to me, but that's the humor.
Well, that's kind of like today's version of the Jackie Mason thing, right?
Right.
That Tony Hinchcliffe. Although I have to say, my wife's Puerto Rican, and she wasn't bothered by that. I didn't like it, but she was like, "Yeah, they do have a
thought it was
garbage problem in
funny.
Puerto Rico."
So let me just tell you, because I think I'm not pronouncing it right, but I'm going to say it's.
But
Judy
everyone does think they're like he's funny, and I don't think he's funny.
Right.
Trump?
Yeah.
Pocahontas was fun.
Let's go.
Trump
Let's
is
go back to
authentic.
something that Judy said about other countries, because I think that's important to point out.
Yeah.
Because in France, it's Dunon or something. I can't how it's pronounced, but he is a comedian, and this is his bit. He gets up there, and he mentions the name of a Jewish journalist or a Jewish politician, and he says, I really think we should bring the gas chambers back. That's his whole bit, and that's the Lenny Bruce moment. They wait for him to do that, and he has been prosecuted in Austria, Germany, and France. He's in and out of prison all the time by doing this. I think we should bring this back, and people wait for him to use that bit to say he names a few Jews in the area or publicly known, and that's his bit. And he's been in and out of jail.
But it's not funny.
It's not even funny. But I'm saying that the French, the Germans, and the Austrians don't put up with it.
Right. We do. We have
right.
Kanye with his fucking.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between what we would do and they would do. Those guys just take him, put him away. It's endless. You can look them up. Belgium also. The Aristocrats. I love that because you're in that movie. Everyone knows what
I'm
that
9
means.
months pregnant in that
Is
movie.
there- So the Aristocrats, is considered the dirtiest joke ever written. And what's funny about the joke is that it's the same joke, but everyone tells it a different way, right? So this documentary was made. This joke's been around forever, right? No, it's been an old joke.
Judy, Paul Provenza,
Right.
He pitched the documentary to my father. And my father
No
said,
way.
My father, that's a dumb idea. No.
Mandy said that? That's hilarious. Him and Penn Jillette did it.
Yeah, so they talked to 100 comedians. Judy was one of them. It's a hilarious documentary. I remember Judy because I know her and love her, but I also remember Gilbert Gottfried's version was just
Yes.
Gilbert and Greg Rogel.
disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean, it was his version was like literally the whole time I couldn't take it. But is there such a thing in the world of political incorrectness? Is there such a thing that we would say, what is the line that even everyone recognizes if they were to make that movie? Now remember, the whole point of the aristocrat joke is the word aristocrat. Right?
The
It's
whole
not right.
and it's to be as filthy as possible. Like you.
That's the point.
It's a very personal.
Mothers are sleeping with their children.
Yes.
Everyone's jerking each
yes,
other off.
It's
No, don't interrupt him. Go ahead.
Yeah.
it's filthy and disgusting.
It's disgusting. It's a family. It's a family, and they're all having sex with each other.
I do have a funny story about that.
So I'll just can I get no? Shall I
Yeah,
get-
yeah. No, I just wanted to say the Boston Globe named me as they had the 5 filthiest jokes in the Aristocrats, and I was one of them, and my mother called me up and said, I hope you're proud of yourself, Judith.
So they listed you and Gilbert Gottfried and who else? Do you remember?
Sarah, I think.
I remember that. That was funny.
Yeah,
She
and
did
there
that.
was 5 of us. I forgot who the other 2 were.
Well, the
but-
joke is really about the word aristocrats because it's a dramatic act of a family, and they say, well, what do you do? And the father just starts describing what they do in it. They just all have sex with each other, and it's disgusting. And then he says, the agent or the manager they're pitching it to, or the Noam show
Oh, God.
producer they're pitching it to says something like, okay, so what do you call yourself? And you go, the aristocrats. But right? And so that's the joke. It's the oldest, dirtiest joke. And the question is, will we look back on the cancel culture and say, you know, there were things you just weren't allowed to say about race or homophobia or sexism, the things you just couldn't say. But here's one that just simply, looking back on it now, you realize, that we might have been able to take the aristocrat joke. We just take the joke of the word. The joke is the word the aristocrats. It's not the telling of it. It's the irony that you guys would call yourself the aristocrats.
Well, I mean, I don't know where to start. There's always going to be things that you shouldn't say because the audiences don't like it and people are offended by it, and it's self-destructive and self-defeating for your career. And
Do we know the answer to that? Did the aristocrats generate that kind of?
no, I think the aristocrats was a joke which was never actually told. Maybe at some like bawdy.
Or the Friars
comment.
Club, like some kind of,
I see.
A very select group, but it was more like comedians, tell to each other. But I think the thing about cancel culture is much more that it was a time when we felt that there should be real punishment and accountability. That was the phrase that I heard all the waiters and waitresses using when we discussed it. That there needs to be accountability, that somehow it's not enough that you didn't go over and the club won't book you anymore and whatever it is, that you should be held responsible,
Right.
lose your job,
Right.
you'd be drummed out. Basically, it's like you said, the Scarlet Letter, the town square. We should know who you are.
Flogging.
And this is, this is just wrong, and it's un-American. I think I heard you say it was un-American.
It is un-American.
And it has no limiting principle. And it's a very good thing that we've gotten away from it. Now, Kanye West does have this song out now, N-word Heil Hitler. Now, this is remarkable because, it's just worth saying that when he says Heil Hitler, he's not talking about his, sympathy for capturing the Sudetenland. At this point, Heil Hitler means only the Jewish part of Hitler.
Right.
Of it. So and what did Hitler do? He exterminated the Jews. And yet, okay, Kanye's got mental illness, but there's got to be a couple hundred people who worked on this, who contributed their services. And as far as I know, not a single person has been asked to account for their contribution.
Was that because of what Judy said earlier? You can do it to Jews?
It is partly, but I'm saying, well, that's actually as it should be. It's not like it's
You
terrible.
wouldn't fire the 100 people that were in the recording session.
No,
I wouldn't.
You're old enough.
I don't think he'd use them for anything.
I would. I don't get into people's personal. I would do personal.
I am never working here again.
Because it's the beginning of a entering into a kind of analytic universe that is just going to make a hypocrite out of me sooner or later. What somebody does when they don't work here is none of my business, and I don't like it. But I just it's easy for me actually. But like right after October 7th, we had a guy. He was actually a son of someone who's very friend of mine, who's wearing like a Palestinian armband on October 8th. And people run into me, Noam, you got to do something about it. I said, what do you want me to do about it? It's none of my business, It's true that in retrospect, I would probably have wished I had a rule that nobody should come to work with anything political.
Right.
I didn't see it coming. But I certainly wasn't going to institute that in reaction to one guy's politics that I didn't like. So I just let it go. And you know what? Nothing happened. And then a few days later, he stopped wearing it on his own. Like, it's not the end of the world.
So then do you...
Wait, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Because this is, there is like,
What's that?
He worked here, he probably got worse tips.
Maybe he got worse. Maybe he got better tips. I don't think many people even noticed.
so like if you know that, let's say there's two production companies that you're going to hire for something, and one of them are the people that said nothing during the Kanye, producing the Kanye song, and there's another that didn't do that, and everything else being equal, would you at all say, well, I'd rather hire the people that aren't promoting the anti-Semitic stuff, or it's just like it's so not even in your head at all? I'm just trying to get.
I don't know. If I felt that the people that were coming into my place were, a group of people who wanted to exterminate the Jews, yeah, it might, get,
Yeah.
and they weren't the better production company. I'm just saying. Look, I think you
It's
could.
just that sometimes when people say things, they apologize, they misspeak, they might be cliche or whatever, but sometimes they say things that they mean.
I think you can break almost any principle and analogy with like an ad absurdum hypothetical. Then I'll say, okay, Uncle, I wouldn't use.
Okay, I'm just trying to, because I do think it's really hard. I think it's a really hard
But the problem
question.
is that these were not the everyday difficult cases, except for maybe with Roseanne,
Right.
that most people were facing. Like we were facing the professor who used, a big word for stingy and that kind of thing, and this was all ridiculous.
A couple things. First of all, you just reminded me when we talked earlier about the professor. And has anyone here read Philip Roth's *The Human Stain*? Because that one picks up something nicely too, with a professor who nobody shows up to class, and he says, "Where are these spooks? They never showed up to class." It turns out there were 2 students who were African American. He was fired. And so that's early. That's a harbinger. That he picked up on that very early in *The Human Stain*. It was made into a movie with Nicole Kidman. It's not a very good movie, but it's worth seeing because if you're not going to read the novel, but it really picked up on something.
But it's the
where
point he didn't mean to be referring to.
He was also Jewish and African American, but he didn't want anyone to know that he was African American. He wanted everyone to know that he was Jewish because he married a Jewish woman, and he was hiding as a Jewish man, even though he was a light-skinned African American. And he comes into the faculty meeting and he shows them the dictionary, the word spook. The African American definition is number 4. It's not 1. 1 is something else, ghosts. So he says they picked up on that. And there's something similar to that, because it's similar to the Roseanne Barr. Something that troubled me, and I mentioned it in one of the First Amendment book. Does anyone remember the guy who owned the Los Angeles Clippers?
Can I ask you a question about the Philip Roth? In the story, was he meaning to refer to black people? Or?
No, he didn't know. He'd never
Okay.
seen them.
He
They
had-
never showed up to
Yeah.
class.
Yeah, it was
So he was really pissed off. He
they ghosted
he would take attendance, and one day he simply said, "Where are these spooks?"
And then it turned out that they were black.
Yeah, and
Okay.
he then was fired after 30 years of being the department chair of the English department. And Roth was all over that very early, very early.
But wait, can I just say
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Because you're talking about what's going to happen in the future. Are they going to go back and say, "Oh, we
Yeah,
couldn't say that.
yeah.
We couldn't say that"? I go back now and go, "Oh my God, look what we could say."
Yeah.
So I think it's the opposite. I think there was a two episode arc on Maude, which was on network television about her having an abortion.
Yeah, I remember that.
That would never get on network television right now. Norman Lear stuff, half of the stuff
And
Archie
I
Bunker
love
said.
that the Smothers, you pulled out a great one. The Smothers Brothers
Smothers
is
Brothers.
a great example.
It's such a perfect example of Nixon getting so pissed off that they were making fun of him.
But
And
the-
Lyndon Johnson wrote him a letter.
Yeah.
That wrote them a letter saying, I'm sorry you were canceled.
But the difference there is that that's when the corporation was responding because the White House was pissed off. The people were rallying
well,
the
no,
Smothers,
the White House
Smothers
was
Brothers.
calling them,
Right.
was calling the network and like,
Exactly.
listen, can you do,
Right.
know.
It wasn't. That's why I said by saying, what's interesting about the cancellation culture is not the word cancellation; it's culture. It's
Right.
that the people rose up and forced corporations to take decisions that they might not have undertaken
Right.
because people decided that there was a sense of morality that they could not tolerate, that had been a moral code that has now been violated. That is very different because what you're describing from my era for sure, which was the social consciousness of the 1960s, where that's where the culture was.
Right.
They loved
But
what was
not
going
for
on.
everyone.
But I think a lot of the people, and again, for me, it's all a question of who's saying it, where do you draw the line, everything like that. But I think now the moral outrage is people who maybe foolishly are trying to speak for people who they feel like don't have a voice, and they're just like, and sometimes they sound stupid, right? Because they're just, it's like what we were talking about before when we met earlier, when, it's like when you go to the college tours, I don't know if anybody's been on college tours, but the students always start with, let's thank the Native Americans for their land, just like this fake thing, right? It's like
They
either
do that at New York Theater Workshop,
yeah,
too.
it's
all of their
literally
shows.
just give them back the land or shut the fuck up, right? So it's that sort of performative thing, but sometimes it really is people who seem to have all the power. A lot of the comics who are in trouble they're very wealthy, they're very powerful,
And they're
and
not in trouble.
they're not in trouble. Some people get really mad at them for, quote, punching down, and it's not like they're challenging the White House. They're literally picking on people that aren't them.
Can I say two things?
Yeah.
First of all, it's worth noting that what used to be the things in the 60s and 70s that you're describing, that took place in what we kind of consider the unsophisticated quarters of America, and in the 90s even, and the idea of the phrase politically incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
This was an effective marketing phrase for liberal content. Liberal people were in favor of hearing the outrageous stuff, and what was so striking about the modern era is that it completely flipped. It was that the most sophisticated people were now the ones clutching their pearls, what you should and shouldn't
If you
say.
went to an Ivy League school,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
Right.
and so that's a huge change,
Yeah.
And number one, and what was the other thing you just said? I forgot.
So
I'm talking about the people
Oh.
the Indian
virtue
land.
virtue
protecting
signaling.
people who may feel like they're foolishly or not protecting people who don't have a voice. Like that's, I think
remember
that's
what I
the
said.
issue.
The other thing I wanted to say is that, what can get lost here is not the fate of these comedians who get canceled. It was how that filtered down to an oppressive environment that we all felt of, that we could all get fired for saying the wrong thing.
Right.
Every person I know who works in, companies and whatever it is,
Right.
they were all petrified of anybody finding out the jokes they made, their opinions. They were just, this, like, everybody was living under this terrible cloud of thought crimes.
What-
We'd never experienced anything like that ever.
Well,
But
you- go ahead.
But right now we have, everyone thinks the right wing people are the free speech. Not if you're saying, I want to control the Kennedy Center. I want to take away the National
Right.
Endowment for the Arts. I want to take money away from NPR. That is not
I want to
free
take
speech.
money away from universities.
Right, but that is not free speech to me. That is limiting speech. The problem with the, it is who decides. You get to the point where, so you go to a college, they have a lefty left person, or a righty right person, and all the lefties protest, and they canceled the person on the right. And then they have a lefty left person, and the people on the right are like, fuck that. They're not going to speak here either. And then it goes up to the dean. Who's allowed to speak here? Who's the king that is going to decide who can speak and what they can talk about? And right now, we have someone who is sort of doing that.
Well-
and it's
Remember-
scary,
let me just
terrifying.
quickly just do the law professor thing,
Yeah.
very quickly, because I think people are confused about, and I think Judy just made me think about this for a second. Remember, the First Amendment is a negative right. It's not a positive right. It doesn't say you have the right to free speech. It said that the government can't stop you from speaking. It's a very different idea, right? People are going, I have a right to free speech. If Judy, she and I get in an argument and she pisses me off,
And I win.
and she always, and then I say, you hurt my feelings, and she says, well, I have a free speech right to do so, and I say, no, the First Amendment has nothing to do with you and me. Our friendship has nothing to do with, it's the government stopping you from speaking. So when Judy started talking about Trump making decisions about culture, in a weird way, although it's not passing a law, he's not passing a law, but he is saying things where it's infringing upon speech, right?
Right.
It's making people. It is the government, which is not the case in the ordinary sense. In ordinary sense, people get confused about the Colin Kaepernick thing all the time. No, of course, he doesn't have a free speech right to take a knee. It's not the government. If the state of California told the state that in all football games you have to stand at the Pledge of Allegiance, then you have a First Amendment problem. But if the owners of the San Francisco 49ers go, hey, you know what? You're on the job, and we want you to stand up with your helmet and shut up. It's a job. So that's what got confusing, that even during Black Lives Matter, everyone changed their mind again. But they shouldn't have, because free speech is something to protect you from the government infringing upon
But the government is now doing that.
Right, well, that's why Judy is...
With the George Stephanopoulos, with the Paramount
with 60
thing,
Minutes,
with the Kennedy Center.
We're
They
gonna have
fired
state-run
everybody.
That's what I'm
from
saying. Would
from
you,
the
Judy?
Kennedy Center, and it's
Right.
going to be right-wing programming. It's not... That,
So-
I mean, that's
okay,
why
let's-
that's such a
let's-
bigger deal to me.
There is no right-wing programming. I mean, what theater
Ted
is
Nugent.
Ted Nugent? Right. I mean, it's
He's
just...
going to be a star.
I don't know,
Kid Rock.
Judy. I don't know. I will confess, and I think my bona fides are pretty good on free speech. But even way back when there was this thing at the City Museum, and it showed the Virgin Mary in feces or whatever it was.
This is when Giuliani was mayor.
Yeah. I had a sympathy for the notion that, if the city is going to have a museum, which may be a bad idea to begin with,
I get it.
I'm not offended by the people who say, I don't want my tax dollar going to showing the
Right.
Virgin. And
Well, it was urination on
elephant dung.
right, elephant dung.
But what did I say? Feces, right?
feces, yeah.
Yeah.
That counts.
Yeah. Or
I get
you know,
that.
or
But a
you know,
private gallery
a
can have real shit
yeah,
there.
but we're not talking about private galleries.
Scratch and sniff, you know?
Crucifix and urine, this kind of stuff, and NPR. At one of the most traumatic times in my life, when we were worried about the place being burned down during the riots, NPR runs a story which is about it in praise of looting or whatever it was.
Oh, I know.
So don't tell me
I get,
there's,
I mean Sesame
now
Street.
all of a sudden,
I should have said PBS.
So
'cause-
now all of a sudden,
Yeah.
we're clutching our pearls. So
Yeah.
there's a part of me which
Good one.
is sympathetic to the idea, like, get the money out of all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to universities, I haven't looked into that fully. That's a tougher thing. But obviously, we know
Research.
that if the universities were ramming, pro-life stuff and anti-gay stuff down the throats of these students, we would see all the same people are outraged now, saying, "You better cut the funding to those
Right,
universities."
right.
Come on, who are we kidding?
But they are. Those like Liberty University.
Right,
and
but
all
for
those
30
places.
years, nobody cared about cutting. No, I think Liberty University may have stopped taking some of these people stopped taking funding from the government, the right-wing places.
So we're almost coming to the end.
Wait, do we get another letter from...
Yeah, that's what I
yes.
want to do. But I want to end on a letter, but I want to do a couple quick things. One, staying in your lane. That's a term of art we hear all the time. Do you think, for instance, Judy, hammers away at Jews. Chris Rock is merciless on his people. Merciless. He doesn't hold back at all. Do you think that is it better coming from someone who's there? We sort of touched on this earlier. Or do you think that Judy could actually go on stage and do Chris Rock's material?
No, she can't.
No,
Right.
I can't.
Okay,
I
so
can't do that.
so there is something.
And there's plenty of Jewish
It's
jokes.
not her point of view.
Right. And
So-
there's plenty of Jewish jokes I'll do for Jews that I won't do for non-Jews. Because
why is that?
they won't get it, and they'll take it the wrong way. They won't understand where I'm coming from.
Well, so
They'll
Sacha
they'll
Baron.
weaponize it.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but Sacha Baron Cohen, I did an event about this with Abe Foxman from the ADL. I remember this, thanks to the good memory. Sacha Baron Cohen did a bit where he went to a honky-tonk in Arizona.
Yes.
And he sang a song as a
Right.
country music star, pretending to be a country, called "Let's Throw the Jews Down the Well," right? And he wrote a song, and
Such a
he
catchy
started
tune.
singing it, and then the whole bit was that people picked up on the lyric, and soon the entire club
yeah.
was singing it, right? And it drove Abe Foxman from the ADL insane. He blew his mind.
But it was
Right.
such a piece of art showing.
Yeah.
It was just showing. There was a meaning. Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
behind
Showing
it.
the culture
Right.
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 So I would.
He's speaking
But I'm
truth
saying
to power.
that's
That's
different. But that's
That's
a different
opposite.
that's a different lane,
I
right?
would say-
he was taking advantage of an audience that he knew would
Right.
take the bait.
And we're laughing at that.
I would
Okay.
say that there's a general rule to what you're saying that it's a lot easier for Jews to make Jewish jokes, less to make black jokes. But there is, I like to say, there's a genius exception to almost every rule, and we see. So Louis, before he got in trouble, he was doing a lot of very edgy jokes about black jokes, using the N-word, and he was adored by black people. And Andrew Schultz, I went to see him at Madison Square Garden, and he did some very high level of difficulty racial stuff. And I was watching the black people in the audience very carefully, and they were eating it up. Now again, maybe they're self-selected, but I haven't seen anybody object to Andrew Schultz. So somehow, beyond what he's saying, his essence is coming through, and it succeeds, and they embrace him, and they give him latitude that maybe they wouldn't give Judy. So it's a general rule, but it's not a hard and fast
Right,
rule.
I agree.
Give us an email and then we'll say goodnight.
Well, this is I just found this one recently. It's not exactly about. It is about a customer who was unhappy. But I just think this one is so funny. Liz, hi. The seating staff all had sour looks on their faces, and I want the staff here to listen. By the way, Liz, the seating staff all had sour looks on their faces and were not friendly. Once we were seated in a very cramped space, we realized that there was a totally empty booth next to us where no one was going to be seated, and everyone around us said it would be better for my husband to sit there so they would have more room. They did not offer us, I'm cutting to make it shorter, they did not offer us a nice other spot to sit to free up space. Instead, only once someone said with a nasty tone, well, we could put you somewhere else, which in context with the nasty behavior didn't sound like a nice offer to anyone. This is where it gets good now. This ruined my date with my husband and frankly, might impact our ability to grow our family. Because the experience was so dreadful that we are missing a cycle to try for a baby this month. The intent was to go out and have some laughs, to take the tension off our week, and the absolute opposite happened. The fact that only one comedian was funny meant that our overriding experience was the issue with the servers, because we never had that experience that we usually do of losing ourselves in the hilarious comedy. So we just had this nasty experience overall, and the consequences to me personally of not being able to have a nice date night are pretty significant since we are an older couple and I don't have that many fertile cycles left.
It's like the Handmaid's Tale.
What a mental patient.
Oh my
On the other hand,
Thank God she won't reproduce.
Yeah, exactly.
on the other hand,
It's almost like the Onion.
That's a real letter.
it does sound.
And it's actually longer. I cut it shorter.
No, it does. On the other hand, it does say that you're doing God's work,
Yes.
right? Because people think that this would even make them more fertile if they show up here before they do it.
Right.
All right, our night comes to an end. This was really a blast. Want to thank Noam and Karen and Judy. And
Don't we take questions or something? No questions?
no,
Oh,
well,
sorry, you're shit out of luck.
she's got another gig. Thanks. You can find us at folks.org, folcs.org. Thank you so much. We have an event at the 92nd Street Y on July 9th. You can find it. But go on folks.org and see we do programming all over the city. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.